Well, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well on Tuesday, June 2nd. My name's Don Reed. I'll be joining you today for the Daily Coot Connect, and our topic is using the tried and true. And what that's referring to are some well-known topical areas around how we operate as individuals. So I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Just want to recognize that we might be able to use some of this information based on what we're all witnessing in the news and around the nation right now. And just to honor that, however you want to think about that or process that, just want to spend 15 seconds of silence for just a moment. Okay, thank you. So using the tried and true, many of you have likely heard of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a book that came out in the late 70s, certainly gained a lot of popularity into the 80s and 90s. And many of the topical areas and exercises and discussion points that are contained in that book still hold true today. And the reason is the author, Stephen Covey, researched a lot of things based on principles, meaning a principle is something that is going to hold true no matter what. If you think about, a law of gravity, right? That's going to hold true here on Earth no matter where you're at on the surface of the Earth. If I stand on my desk and step off, I'm going to go down. So that's going to hold true. And these principles are principles about human behavior and how we operate. So we're going to get into that. First slide here. Just talk about one of the key things, and you've probably heard about this somewhere in your life, and that is the circle of influence. Think of this circle of influence being you're at the center, and your actions, your behaviors, your statements, and so forth ripple outward and affect other people, impact on people and circumstances that you find yourself in. So we're going to talk about that a little bit and some of the things associated with that. So think of that circle of influence and circle of concern. Now, what this is talking about is a lot of folks take control of things immediately around them. If I'm all alone in my life and I'm just looking at doing my work around my desk, around my home and so forth, I can control my actions, my thoughts, what I say to myself and to, if I'm in the garage working around or out in the yard working or whatever it may be, that's my little sphere or bubble that I'm carrying around. As soon as others enter in, as I see and witness things I either agree with or don't agree with, or whether I'm responsible for something that happened, good or bad, how do I respond to that? How do I interact with other people around that? And that begins to influence or raise my ability to influence events and how people conduct themselves around me and others and so forth. The circle of concern are things outside of what I immediately can impact on. I have a lot of thoughts and opinions about what I see in the news or what I see as I walk down the street, or if I'm over in Seattle and see people with Husky shirts on, maybe I don't like it, or maybe I want to jab at that a little bit. Whatever it may be, in a kidding way, it's still those are things that maybe I'm concerned about. They're circling around all of us all of the time as far as current events and people's statements and how people behave. But I really can't change them, right? So whether we're talking about the President of the United States, a leader of a company, somebody in our unit, whatever it may be, I can say things like, well, I don't like that, or they shouldn't be doing that, or things along those lines. Well, that's great. Maybe I'm concerned about it, but I really don't have any impact unless I step up to the plate. So I need to go back to my circle of influence and say, what can I do? What can I say? How am I going to conduct myself as I approach that individual or that issue in life, those types of things. So the point here is, if you just notice the circle there, it kind of shrunk a little bit, is a lot of us tend to spend our life, and I'm just as guilty as anybody, I have to watch myself all the time with my self-talk, is looking at these issues that swirl around us and get caught up in that. And it can consume a lot of our daily interactions and thoughts and so forth. But keep pulling back to that circle of influence and make it grow. The more you take responsibility for your actions and your thoughts and behaviors around others, and make sure that's all well taken care of, according to good principles and so forth. And I would refer you back to, if you've never even read a Cliff Note version of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, really encourage you to take a look at this a little bit further to gain more knowledge and insight. So that's our point here, is to keep working on self, keep growing that circle of influence as we go through our work life, our personal life, and how we impact on others around us. So this was a poll conducted by when Covey was and his company was first putting together the training course around this information. They had a poll that they would take, and this one says, people focus on things they can impact rather than on things they cannot impact. How many people that took the poll agreed with that statement? Meaning, yes, people focus on things they can impact rather than things they cannot. And as you can see, only 31% in their view said people focus on things they can impact rather than on all of that stuff in the circle of concern, that stuff that's outside of us. So, you know, that leaves a lot of room for growth and areas in which all of us maybe can improve. I guess I start with myself and go, well, yeah, people focus on things they can impact. Well, I know I do. But boy, that person doesn't, or that person doesn't, those kinds of things. Well, if I get caught up in that, I need to look myself in the mirror and go, wow, am I really doing the things that I need to be doing to create positive change, to create good influence around others and the outcomes that I deal with. So that takes us to some good old Psychology 101. Still remember taking Psych 101 here at WSU in Todd Auditorium many years ago. But you know, really just take it down to a very simplistic view of this. I know there's a lot more to it than just what the model is on the screen, but rather than just having reactive behaviors, which any member of the animal kingdom, we all process, any animal processes input, and then there's, you know, physical reactions. As humans, hopefully with the cerebral cortex and other operational systems and practice, maybe we can change our response, or how quickly that response happens. So all of us, through our upbringing, through moms and dads and teachers and schooling and coaches and everything, we learn things. We learn topics, we get good at topics, we get good at skills in certain areas. Maybe if you're an athlete, you get good at certain athletic responses and behaviors and things you should and should not do. But if you look at the basic model, it says, boom, stimulus, and we respond based on moods, feelings, circumstances. So I take it down and try to relate that to how I respond. Well, gee, when I'm hungry, I do get a little quicker on the response and less, you know, thinking about what I should be doing, and start responding from feelings. You know, I got that hunger feeling or whatever it may be. Maybe that's not the best time to be responding. I should step back. So the point here is, how can I increase that response time? How can I slow it down? Pause and respond based on good principles. Another way to frame that, I tend to not try to use too many athletic examples, but if you've ever heard an athlete, either in the college ranks or high school, you know, every time they go from the high school ranks to the college, and if they make it to the pros, you will hear them say, wow, the game's so much faster here. But after they've gotten used to it, what happens is, and you will hear quarterbacks definitely say this, is the game slows down. In other words, what's going on is they're now used to seeing all this stimulus around them, even though it may be, if it's football, the quarterback may no, there's a 300-pound defensive lineman or a 240-pound linebacker charging in right at them. But where their focus needs to be is knowing where the receivers are, where the gaps are in the defense and so forth, to make the right plays and make the right delivery of the ball and so forth. So what that is saying is there's all this stimulus coming at them, but the more you're used to a given scenario, a given setting, a certain set of behaviors, you can slow that down and let the mind process. Now, in the classroom, for instance, when I first stepped into the classroom, I was literally terrified of public speaking, just absolutely hated it. And over time, through learning good skills from other trainers, from going to courses and learning good classroom skills, good speaking and presentation skills, the whole thing started to slow down for me. I used to feel, going back to stimulus response, that if there was a moment of silence while I was speaking, somebody had to fill the gap. And if the classroom wasn't, I better be doing it. Well, I tend to be an introvert. I speak at a slower pace. I like to process things. And, you're standing in front of a classroom of 30 people or so, and you go up in your head to find an answer or a response that you want to provide, and it feels like eternity. Now, having gotten used to that, I've probably had more than 4,000 hours or more in the classroom. Nowadays, I'll just let it sit there for a while for a couple of reasons. First of all, it lets me have time to process whatever a question was, whatever the next exercise may be, to make sure it's set up right. But also it allows the people in the classroom to process their thoughts and be able to know that it's okay to ask questions and so forth. And what I have found is it actually makes the class go better. So that's another example of just how do we pause in the moment. Now, let's take it right back to that circle of influence. Let's take it to home life. We know our spouses, we know our kids, we know others that are close friends to us. We know how they operate, right? We know how they're going to respond. They probably have the same feeling about us. And just examine that of how quickly am I using this little model about stimulus and response? Am I letting things sit and process so I'm responding truly to what is being said and the intention of the other person? Or am I just reacting based on past, whether that's good or bad? How can I start being more positive, more constructive, and have a better influence on family members, on close friends, and people within my work group even that I work closely with, so that we have good outcomes, we have good interactions, we clarify intentions and so forth. And that's tough to do because we do all learn those habits. So it's another way to think about the influence versus, circle of influence. How do I get better so that my behavior rolls outward and creates that positive impact on others as I interact with them? So one small example, and this will be one of the last things that we look at today, is just what kind of language do I use? And I'm going to keep it real simple, but when you start putting it out there at other people, we're looking at things like, they made me do it, she made me do it, he made me do it, what'd you expect, that type of thing. So it's putting it on the other person. The other one is more of a internal restrictive motivational statement when I start to say things like, I can't, or I have to or else. There's an implied or else there, and that's the one that I really have examined over my life is, well, what's the or else? It's not mom or dad saying, you better make your bed or else. So there's no real negative consequence. It's just something that I've developed in my head that I need to be more cognizant of. So when I hear myself saying, I have to, is it I have to or I'm choosing to? All right, so we'll look at the other side in just a moment. Or as soon as I hear from teammates or people in my family life and they're sharing something and I go, it can't be done. That's putting a negative on it and not being a good, influencer outward on the whole process. Change the language to things such as, instead of they made me, Well, I chose to, or I decided to, all right, to take this course of action or to do this instead of that priority at this given moment. Instead of I have to, once again, you could change it to I'm choosing to or I'm going to, and make a positive statement of what you're going to do and then follow through on that. That really shows that influence grows as people rely more on those statements from you when you say I'm going to or I will do the following by X date or time. And then instead of things like it can't be done or that won't work, well, maybe there's another way. Maybe we haven't thought about things, everything. Have we looked at things from different angles and viewpoints? What are others doing that we might borrow from and take that idea and grow it here? So once again, changing the language and what comes out of my mouth, hopefully, once again, goes right back to that circle of influence that we talked about early on. So just wanted to go back. Once again, this was kind of use the tried and true. These are concepts and practices that have been around for a very long time. Stephen Covey did a nice job of collating a whole lot of information that's been a part of human existence for eons, and just made it a very readable, good exercises. Recommend looking at the book if you haven't done so. Take these kinds of things, but once again, go right back to what can I do to impact on how I influence and how I impact on other people. So thank you for joining today. Tomorrow is going to be Laura Hamilton out of our Spokane campus, and she's going to be doing a session on improving our work lives together. So I hope you can join us tomorrow. Go Cougs.